Chapter 6. My mother had been a chorus girl off Broadway. She'd immigrated from Cuba with my father when she was 17. When I got older, I found out that chorus girl was an euphemism for prostitute. I didn't know if she was or not. I like to think that she wasn't. Not because there wasn't any shame in it, but because I know a little bit about what it is to give your body to someone you don't want to, and I hope she didn't have to do that. I was 11 when she died of pneumonia. Obviously, I didn't have a lot of memories with her, but I do remember that she smelled like cheap vanilla, and that she made the most amazing gelato. She never called me Evelyn, only Mija, which made me feel really special, like I was hers and she was mine. Above all else, my mother wanted to be a movie star. She really thought that she could get us out there and away from my father by getting into the movies. I wanted to be just like her. I often wished that on her deathbed she said something moving, something I would take with me always. But we didn't know how sick she was until it was all over. The last thing she said to me was, "Dile a tu padre que esté en la cama. Tell your father I'll be in bed." After she died, I would cry only in the shower, where no one could see me or hear me, where I couldn't tell that what were my tears and what was the water. I don't know why I did that. I just know that after a few months, I was able to take a shower without crying. And then, the summer after she died, I began to develop. My chest started growing and wouldn't stop. I had to riffle through my mom's old things when I was 12 years old, looking to see if there was a bra that would fit. The only one I found was too small, but I put it on anyway. By the time I was 13, I was 5'8", with dark, shiny brown hair, long legs, light brown skin, and a chest that pulled out the bottoms of my dresses. Grown men were watching me walk down the street, and some of the girls in my building didn't want to hang out with me anymore. It was a lonely business, motherless, with an abusive father. No friends, and a sexuality in my body that my mind wasn't ready for. The cashier at the 5 and Dime on the corner was this boy named Billy. He was 16 years old. He was a 16-year-old brother of a girl who sat next to me in school. One October day, I went down to the 5 and Dime to buy a piece of candy, and he kissed me. I didn't want him to kiss me. I pushed him away, but he held on to my arm. "Oh, come on," he said. The store is empty. His arms are strong. He gripped me tighter, and in the moment I knew he was going to get what he wanted from me, whether I let him or not. I had two choices. I could do it for free, or I could do it for candy. For the next 3 months, I took anything I wanted from that 5 and Dime, and in exchange, I saw him every Saturday night, and let him take my shirt off. It never felt like I had much choice in the matter. Being wanted meant having to satisfy. At least that was my view of it back then. I remember him saying in the dark, in the dark, cramped stockroom with my back against a wooden crate, "You have this power over me." He convinced himself that his wanting me was my fault, and I believed him. Look what I do to these poor boys, I thought. And yet also, here's my value, my power. So, when he dumped me, he was bored with me, because he had found something else more exciting, I felt both a deep relief and very real sense of failure. There was one other boy like that, whom I took my shirt off for because I thought I had to, before I started realizing that I could be the one doing the choosing. I didn't want anyone. That was the problem. To be perfectly blunt, I started to figure out my body quickly. I didn't need boys in order to feel good, and that realization gave me great power, so I wasn't interested in anyone sexually. But I did want something. I wanted to get far away from Hell's Kitchen. I wanted out of my apartment, away from my father's stale tequila breath and heavy hand. I wanted someone to take care of me. I wanted a nice house and money. I wanted to run, far away from my life. I wanted to go where my mom had promised me we'd end up someday. Here's the thing about Hollywood. It's both a place and a feeling. If you run there, you can run towards Southern California, where the sun always shines and the grimy buildings and dirty sidewalks are replaced by palm trees and orange groves. But you also run towards the way life is portrayed in the movies. You run towards a world that is moral and just, where the good guys win and the bad guys lose, where the pain you face is only in an effort to make you stronger, so that you can win that much bigger in the end. It would take me years to figure out that life doesn't get easier simply because it gets more glamorous, but you couldn't have told me that when I was 14. So I put on my favorite green dress, that one I had grown out of, and I knocked on the door of the guy who I heard was headed to Hollywood. I could tell I could tell just by the look in his face that Ernie Diaz was glad to see me. And that's who I traded my virginity for, a ride to Hollywood. Ernie and I got married on February 14, 1956. I became Evelyn Diaz and was just 15 by that point, but my father signed the papers. I have to think Ernie suspected I wasn't of age, but lied right to his face about it. And that seemed good enough for him. He wasn't a bad-looking guy, but he also wasn't particularly book-smart or charming. He wasn't going to get me many chances to marry a beautiful girl. I think that he knew that. I think he knew enough to grab the chance when it was swung his way. A few months later, Ernie and I got into his 49th Plymouth and drove west. We stayed with some other girls of his and started his job as a group. Pretty soon we have saved enough to our own apartment. We were on Detroit Street in the Long Prairie. I have some new clothes and enough money to make us roast on the weekends. I was supposed to be finishing high school, but Ernie certainly wasn't going to be checking my report cards. Attending school was a waste of time. I had come to Hollywood to do one thing, and I was going to do it. Instead of going to class, I'd walk down to the Formosa Cafe for lunch every day and stayed through a happy hour. I had recognized the place from the gossip ranks. I knew famous people hung out there. I was right next to right next to a movie studio. The red building the red building with cursive writing and a black awning became my daily spot. I knew that it was a lame move, but it was the only one I had. If I wanted to be an actress, I would have to be discovered, and I wasn't sure how you went about that, except by hanging out by the spots where movie people might be. So I went there every day and nursed a glass of Coke. I did it so often and for so long that eventually the bartender got sick of pretending he didn't know what gamble I was running. Look, he said to me, about 3 weeks in, if you want to sit around hoping Humphrey Bogart shows up, that's fine. But you need to make yourself useful. I'm not giving up paying a seat for you to sip soda. He was older, maybe 50, but his hair was thick and dark. The lines of his forehead reminded me of my father's. What do you want me to do? I asked him. I was slightly worried that he'd want something from me I had already given to Ernie, but he threw a writer's pad at me and told me to try my hand at taking orders. I had no clue how to be a waitress, but I certainly wasn't going to tell him that. All right, I said. So where should I start? He pointed at the tables in the place, the booths in a tight row. That's table 1. You can figure out the rest of the numbers by counting. Okay, I said. I got it. I stood up by the bar and started walking over the table 2, where 3 men in suits were seated, talking. The menu's closed. Hey kid, the vendor said. Yes? You're a knockout. $5 says it happens for you. I took 10 orders, mixed up 3 people sandwiches, and made $4. 4 months later, Harry Cameron, then a young producer at Sunset Studios, came in to meet with an exec from the lot next door. They each ordered a steak. When I brought the check, Harry looked up at me and said, Jesus. For 2 weeks later, I had a deal at Sunset Studios. I went home and told Ernie I was shocked that anyone at Sunset Studios would be interested in little old me. I said that as being an actress would just be a fun life, a thing to do in the pastime until my real job of being a mother became. Great old bullshit. I was almost 17 by that point, although Ernie still thought I was older. By, by late 1954, it was late 1954, I would have to get up every morning and head to Sunset Studios. I didn't know how to act my way out of paper bag, but I was learning. It was an extra. I was an extra in a couple romantic movies. I had one line in War Picture. And why shouldn't he? That was the one. I played a nurse taking care of a wounded soldier. The doctor in the scene playfully accused the soldier of flirting with me, and I said, and why shouldn't he? I said it like a child in a fifth grade play, with a slight New York accent. Back then, so many of my words were accented. English spoken like a New Yorker, Spanish spoken like an American. When that movie came out, Ernie and I went to see it. Ernie thought it was his funny little life with a little line in the movie. I had never made much money before, and now I was making as much as Ernie after he promoted to keep it. So I asked him if I could pay for acting classes. I'd made him a cross-con polo that night, and I specifically didn't take my apron off when I brought it up. I wanted him to see me as harmless and domestic. I thought I'd get further if I didn't threaten him. It grated on my nerves to have him to ask him how I could spend my own money, but I didn't see another choice. Sure, he said. I think it's a smart thing to do. You'll get better, and who knows, you might even be a star in a picture one day. I would star. I wanted to punch his lights out. But I've since come to understand that it wasn't Ernie's fault. None of it was Ernie's fault. I told him I was somebody else. Then I started getting angry that he couldn't see who I really was. 6 months later, I could deliver a line of sincerity. It wasn't great by any means, but it was good enough. I've been in three more movies. All-day player roles. I've heard there was an open part to play. Play Stu Cooper's teenager daughter in a romantic comedy, and I decided I wanted it. So I did something that not many other actresses at my level would have the guts to do. I knocked at Harry Cameron's door. Evelyn, he said, surprised to see me. To what do I owe the pleasure? I want the Carolyn part, I said, in Love Is and All. Harry motioned me to sit down. He was handsome for an executive. Most producers around the lot were rotund, a lot of them losing their hair. But Harry was tall and slim. He was young. I suspected he didn't even have a decade on me. He wore suits that fit him nicely and always complimented his ice blue eyes. There was something vaguely Midwestern about him, not so much in how he looked, but in the way he approached people, with kindness first, then strength. Harry was one of the only men who didn't stare directly at my chest. It actually bothered me, as if I had been doing something wrong. Not doing something wrong, not get his attention. It just goes to show that if you tell a woman her only skill is to be desirable, she'll believe you. I was believing it before I was even 18. I'm not going to bullshit you, Evelyn. Ari Sullivan is never going to approve you for the part. Why not? You're not the right type. What's that supposed to mean? No one would believe you were Stu Cooper's daughter. I certainly could be. You could not. Why? Why? Yes, I want to know why. Your name is Evelyn Diaz. So? I can't put you in a movie and try to pretend you're not Mexican. I'm Cuban. For our purposes, same difference.